Everyone, thank you for joining me for another entry into our reading journal. I appreciate it. I hope you guys are having an amazing time, and thank you so much for joining me. Hi, Percy. I am wearing the exact same clothes, the exact same makeup, because we are trying to do multiple videos today, as much as the pets will let me. They're so needy. So today we're going to be talking about our first nonfiction book entry into our reading journal, and that is Cultish. So this book was written by Amanda Montell, and I listened to the audiobook of this, which was narrated by Mary and Gideon, and it was published in 2021 and is listed as nonfiction, feminism, and sociology. And like I said, this is the first nonfiction book that we're entering into the reading journal. Amanda Montell has a degree in linguistics and took a lot of inspiration for this book from her father, who was in a cult in his teenage years. And I thought that was fascinating. It's like, all right, cool. And this book talks about how there's a prevalent use of language that is used to manipulate people into performing certain actions or having certain thought processes, and this type of language is used very, very often and most of the time in cults, but is now showing up in a lot of non-cult situations. And the book starts off with a brief history and background on cults, what makes a cult, and the author talks about some of the most famous cults. Like you have Heaven's Gate in there, you have Jonestown, you have the Branch Davidians, and On Shirikyo, and there's a bunch of different cults that are brought up in there. And she focuses on the cults with leaders that have been known to have a lot of charisma in gaining and keeping followers. And the cult leader that she spends the most time, I think, in the book talking about is Jim Jones. And he was a very charismatic cult leader, and we still have tapes of what happened down in Jonestown to still kind of reinforce how much of a hold he had on his followers. And it was very informative on all of that stuff. She did talk about Scientology, but not as a cult, but more as the cult-ish things, as well as, you know, the Mormon religion and a lot of religious things that she would label as cultish and not cult. So that one plays a lot into it. And this book explores how cults use their language to manipulate their followers into performing acts that they normally wouldn't do, and if they weren't influenced by this language and their leaders and peers. And she gives several examples of these acts, like giving all the money to the cult, cutting off ties with family members, and hurting others and hurting themselves. And that's like a good chunk of the book. And after we're giving a background on cults and the type of language that they use, the book looks at the most common cult-ish things out there. And a large part of this is multi-level marketing schemes. A lot of... Hi, Percy, would you... I don't know what her deal is. She wasn't on here until I started recording. And now she's here. Multi-level marketing schemes, and the author applies what we know about the cult language and puts that in the context of how a lot of these schemes manipulate their members, and there are other groups that use, and how other groups use language as well. Like I said, Scientology, Mormon, a lot of religious, not factions. A lot of religious groups, there you go, use a lot of the cultish language when they gain followers to kind of keep them in line with what their leaders' beliefs are or what their going off beliefs are. But she also talks about social media groups or fitness groups. There's a lot of groups, that any type of group that is kind of closed off from anything. She was talking about how even within this fitness group, it was a spin class, and how the group started becoming cultish and using cultish language to not really they framed it as motivating members to do better in their spinning, to get on the little leaderboards, to be like, hey, I am the bestest spinner that's spinned, but also using cultish language to manipulate in them into being better than the others and then degrading them or like pulling them down when they weren't. And there's a lot of examples in this book that she gives, and I thought that was great as well. And overall, it was a very informative book. This is going to be a shorter one just because I read this a while back, and while I kept the main points of it, the rest of it just kind of went off because I don't have my notes on it. I have the notes that I have in my reading journal, which is pretty much what I put up here, but it's not as in-depth as the book. What I did enjoy about this author was the way that she wrote about the cults. It was very informative. It was a good like half of the book was a lot of the cults. I have a fascination with cults like a lot of people. So a lot of it was information that I already knew. A lot of it was things that I've already read up on, researched, and so I paid attention, but like on a more surface level, paying attention on it just because I knew the information. I was like super fascinated on cults and what causes people to join cults. So I did pay attention to the type of language before, and she's using the language and the knowledge that I already know and her linguistics degree to show how that is framed into like I said, multi-level marketing systems, social groups, fitness groups, anybody with like a membership card anybody who's a part of a group, and how these groups start taking on that cultish language and how it can become malevolent to where they're pushing themselves more towards cults to to manipulate their members, or if there's just more like benign, and how all of these lined up, and especially with like a Trader Joe's cultish thing. The fitness spin group cracked me up a lot. This author did really well on bringing humor into this, and throughout all of her little observations and tellings, it was a lot of humor. There was a lot of pithy dialogue that was brought into the book, which kept it light and breezy throughout the whole thing, which was really appreciative, especially if you listen or do anything with cults in general. It starts to get very, very heavy, and it starts to become something that's very dense and that you can't just like lightly listen to. So I did appreciate that with this book, that it was just, as it wasn't focusing on cults. It was all of the language that is being used by these cultish things with management styles and any type of leader in these closed off groups, even if they're just closed off by being a part of like a different like Twitter group or Facebook group. And that was very fascinating. And we had to create a whole new we had to look up a nonfiction compile system for this, which once we went through it, I rated it a 4.5 out of 5. I really enjoyed this book. I would like to have the actual physical copy or a digital copy of this book so I can actually put bookmarks and have a little bit more notes taken on it, because it did have a lot of other points. I really wish that I could remember a lot of those finer points. When I'm done recording, like maybe down the road, I'll be like, oh damn it, I remember it now. As of right now, I can't, but it's there. I think it's a book that's worthy of reading. Either audiobook is really good. Like I said, I prefer a physical or digital copy. That way I can actually like bookmark it, tab it up a little bit, and be like, oh yeah, that's the thing I wanted to remember, because I downloaded it through my Libby app through the library, and then once that goes, all my notes with it go, because it's all bookmarked in that system. So maybe I'll get it back one of these days and I'll update this video. Until then, that was my thoughts on Cultish. It was a very short video. It's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Hopefully I'll be a lot better with taking notes and everything into different types of media forms, or actually remember to extract those notes from my library app into something a little bit more permanent, so I can give you guys some more in-depth analysis on it at least. But Don't forget to do all of the things, like, rate, follow, subscribe, all of that. If you guys want to hang out with me outside of YouTube or anything, all my social links are in the description below. I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever it is where you are, and I'll hopefully talk to you guys later. Bye!